On today's episode, we discuss changing the input to get different results in 2019. Cody shares his story about how him and his family took ownership of their financial situation, eliminating $83,000 of consumer debt in 2 years. Nick calls in to share how hostels can be an integral part of your travel plans. And Quinn and his wife discuss dietary changes made in 2019. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Very excited to talk about this past week's episode, and to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I'm doing great. Yeah, I actually just got back from Camp FI in Florida. Yesterday afternoon, evening, I actually drove, even though I have all these travel rewards points. And of course, I got a lot of flack for that, good-naturedly, but it was kind of funny.
Dude, I think you actually enjoy 10 hours alone in a car. Like, I think that's actually a thing for you. It took me several years to identify this, but is that what it is, man? Is it singing Taylor Swift out the window for 10 hours straight?
Yeah, it's fairly close to that. At least 2 hours of it. No, in all honesty, it really is relaxing. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a really easy drive. It was like a 700-mile drive, which
a really easy drive. I love how you put those two side by side.
Yeah, I know. It sounds ludicrous, but it's just a straight shot down I-95. I get to kind of just be with my thoughts and listen to music, listen to podcasts, and it's fairly relaxing. I don't know how or why, and yeah, it was a really nice weekend. And I kind of approached it different mentally, actually, this time, which I don't know if there's any value in this, but just trying to think of like, get 1% better. You and I are always thinking about that. How can we make our lives a little bit better? And I really do apply that to all aspects of my life, or I try to. And this Camp FI was no different. I think I've left some of them, probably the most recent one in Virginia, actually, that I went to last year, feeling almost a little unfulfilled. It was a wonderful experience. I got to meet amazing people, but it felt like I was just having these little short snippet conversations. And I felt like I needed to be available for those short snippet conversations. I didn't actually dive into anything. Like if someone asked me to play basketball for an hour or play a board game for 90 minutes, I almost reflexively said no, because in the back of my mind, like, I need to be available, to kind of chat with people. And this was all internal. Nobody was putting this on me, obviously. But this time I just went into it and said, you know what, I'm going to say yes. And I just thought that was like a cool perspective. And that was my entire weekend. I'm going to say yes to the things that I want to do. And on Saturday afternoon, that meant during our 4 free hours, that meant like me basically exercising and playing games and having fun for like 3 of those 4 hours in a row. I mean, Jonathan, it was so awesome. I wound up doing this kind of CrossFit-esque workout with Joel from Phi 180 and Chad Carson. Then we played this like funny game called Gaga Ball. It's actually this game my kids play. Steven, the organizer, his kids were there and they're like, hey, let's go play Gaga Ball. So like I said yes, and then it was pick up basketball. And again, I would have normally said no to that, but I said yes, and it was so much fun. So I think, that 1% better is really an important aspect of life.
Well, there's 2 things that, I'm noticing. One is that this is actually your 3rd year going to that exact Camp FI. I mean, this is something now, it's like built into your routine that you're doing this. And then 2, you have your voice, man. This might be the first time that you've left a Camp FI and had a voice.
Yes, I do have my voice. I think I've gotten a little bit better just generally. And luckily I didn't get sick this time. But yeah, that was a big success, just coming back with a voice. But yeah, it was cool. It was just a fun weekend. I mean, Steven does an amazing job putting these Camp FIs together. I just got to meet a lot of people from our community, met a ton of new people, and just heard so many cool stories. Like this one woman, Rebecca, had this amazing story of how she rose from basically starting as like an AP clerk without an accounting degree to being basically a VP of accounting without an accounting degree. And
Wow.
I just thought that was fascinating. Like, she's someone we should get on the show to talk about that, because it speaks to what you and I have talked about. Education matters, but it only matters so much. On the job, learning and training and caring matters more than anything. And she told me this incredible story of how she just worked her tail off for 10 years, just being the best at her job. And she was rewarded for it. I just thought that was fascinating. And yeah, just got to meet a whole boatload of people. And, there were just these groups, and it was really cool. Like, people, there were a bunch of runners. We actually had 2 ultra marathoners and a bunch of people who just run on a regular basis. They got up in the 6 o'clock hour and went out for an 8 to 10 mile run. And, it's just a good group of people. And actually, one last kind of anecdotal thing. There was this one guy, Steve, who his wife actually listens to our podcast and has gotten into FI. She pretty much just sent him to this event, sight unseen. He more or less knew nothing about FI, had never listened or read any blogs, and he just showed up on Friday. And he's like, I don't know why I'm here, but this is cool, and I'm gonna like dive into it, And he left. Like, I talked to him Sunday night. His life was changed. That is just incredible to me. So yeah, it was a very cool weekend all around.
I'm curious, you and I both keep going back and for understandable reasons. Is that what you're seeing from the attendance there? Is it a good blend of people that have come before and new people? I mean, just what was the mix there?
Yeah, I forget the exact number of people. There were probably somewhere in the vicinity of 60 or 65 all told. I probably had met or known 20, 25 of them. So I would say it's certainly, for me at least, the majority were people I had never met before or seen at a Camp FI or any other FI event. But, many of those people had been going to their Choose a FI local groups, right? And they heard about Camp FI and they wanted to get something more immersive. For many people, this was their first FI community event, period. But for many of them, they're a part of their local group and they just wanted to meet people from around the country. So yeah, I would say it was a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And it kind of, I suspected that you would see that, you're going to get a blend of people that just, they want to do it again. They're either going to go back to the exact same camp, or maybe they try to go to a different geographic location, or maybe try a different event altogether. But, that community aspect's real. And then I love is seeing the new faces come in. Someone that didn't go the first year and said, you know what, that sounds amazing, and I want to give that a shot. And hopefully, it's one of those things that it continues to build and you continue to see the demand for this. I know Steven, he has gone all in on just trying to create an incredibly welcoming event that's at a very affordable price and really spread all around the country. So there's no reason not to give it a shot. And on my end, Brad, we spent our entire week trying to potty train my 20-month-old. And at the, I guess you could call it
best segue of all time, Jonathan. I love it.
Yep. Well, that's my life, man. That's where I'm at right now. And at the high or the low of this event, we are in the parking lot of a local shopping mall and realizing that he's got to go. And my wife is having me join her in the back, and we're trying to coax him into having this movement on his little potty. And we're all just like, we don't have a minivan. This isn't like one of these incredibly spacious events. Like, I can only imagine from the other people that in the parking lot what this actually looked like. And I was like, man, this is parenthood. I finally understand.
Oh, geez. That sounds hilarious. Yeah. Any actionable takeaway?
I mean, you got to commit, man. That's the thing. I mean, that's what my wife keeps telling me, because I just, as soon as it's like not working and you guys are having this conversation, and then after like 3 hours of investment, it goes south, the metaphors just write themselves. You just want to give up. But she's convinced me that it's going to be like, I don't know, it may take a day, it may take a week, but we are all in on this hand. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have something to report. Frankly, probably if I don't report it, that's the best possible outcome, because it means we've all moved on to this next stage. But the Mendonza household, we're not focusing on the rule of 72. We're not focusing on automating our bank accounts. We're not focusing on anything second generation FI. We're just trying to get through potty training this week. But wait, I do have a follow-up, and this is something that I can add back to the conversation. A couple weeks ago, I talked about bill fixers, and I was saying that my cable had just gotten out of control. I had signed up for this package at this entry-level rate, and I thought I had a fixed rate at like something around $50 a month, and then I checked my bill and it was somewhere north of 80. And apparently I had Verizon Fios, and with this package, like after you fell out of contract after a period of 2 years, they just hiked up my number to $86. This was really frustrating. And I mean, Rocky was talking about negotiation in this past episode. I loathe it. And if there was a way that I could get, a good deal without having to actually go through the negotiation price. I'm really interested in that. So I had found out about this service called Bill Fixers, which you can find at billfixers.com. And what they do is they actually negotiate on your behalf. So you take them the service that you want to have negotiated. And in many cases, it's cable and internet, but there's plenty of others that they can do this for you on. They call on your behalf and they will negotiate a lower rate for you. And then whatever they save you, you'll just pay them half of that the first year. And Brad, they got my bill. So I think I had like a 25/5 package. So 25 download, 5 upload, something like that. They got my package down from 86 down to 45 for 2 years. And they increased my internet up to 100 megabits per second download and 100 megabits per second upload. We do a fair amount of, data bandwidth with this podcast and some of the other associated media that we produce. And that was amazing. I mean, I would have been fine just maintaining the current package to get 4 times that amount for something odd, I don't know, something around $40 a month less than what I was currently paying. I was just blown away, and I will happily re-engage them 2 years from now and do something similar so I don't have to do this again.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, okay, just for my own edification here, is the only time to do this when your package is coming up for renewal? I have Verizon and our contract doesn't run out for a while. Do I have to wait until that point, or can you get in touch with them? And maybe not just in this one isolated incident, but can Bill Fixers or other companies like them, can they go to town on all of your subscriptions and such? Like,
I think they can
once?
just go to town. Honestly, it's a small company. So I suspect that we could just reach out to them and have like the CEO come on and tell us a little bit more about how they came up with this and what they do and what the best they've seen is. I mean, they've saved their customers millions of dollars in aggregate over time. I don't think there's any requirement. In my own mind, I was thinking, I'm already here on the other side of the contract, and the story's slightly more complicated than what I just laid out. Just there's a couple other variables. I saw that if I were to sign up for my contract again on Verizon, it would lower my bill back down to something like 60 months. So I would have to go back into contract, but that would have automatically lowered it. So I could have just done that, but I wanted to give them a chance to see if they could go even lower. So with that in mind, I asked them, hey, I want to give you the chance to do even lower. And if you can go lower than this amount of about $60 a month, then I will be willing to, pay you the difference. But, and they agreed to that on the front end. So they were totally fine with that. So in reality, they got me down from 60 to like something like 45. So that was like, I realized that kind of complicates the story a little bit here, but I suspect that just in general, if you have a list of bills that you're paying, you could just send them, all of them. They go to town. And if they save you money, you work it out per the way their contract's set up. You pay them half of whatever they save you that first year. If they don't, it doesn't cost you anything. They don't charge you anything up front. So there's no downside to just handing them every recurring bill that you have, within reason, and just saying, what can you do? Because I don't want to do this. Like that's frankly where I'm at. So take it for what it's worth, but it's not going to cost you literally any, setup. You don't even have to talk to them to set it up. You just go create an account, upload your bill, give them your phone number, and they report back to you in a week or two with whatever they came up with.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. I might just give it a test run myself. So why not, right? It doesn't sound like there's a downside. And yeah, just 2 super quick pseudo updates here. So actually, my wife, Laura, loved the episode we had on solar panels with Brian Feraldi. She took it upon herself to make this her project for 2019, to investigate this. And that doesn't mean we're going to get solar panels, right? But we're going to investigate the numbers and see if it makes sense. So yeah, she's in the process. We just got our first quote yesterday, and I'm actually in touch with Brian. So hopefully he'll be able to help me kind of parse the language and see if it makes sense. So that's something we'll definitely update back on. And I also mentioned in the last week or two about my net worth tracking schedule. We've had a lot of people, Jeff in particular, reached out and said like he can help me automate this and make it so it's kind of ready for prime time. So in the next, I would say maybe this coming Tuesday, but if not the following Tuesday, in our weekly Tuesday Insider email, we will have that ready. So if you want to see that net worth tracking schedule, just sign up for our email list. The easiest way, you can just do it on the homepage of chooseify.com, or just go to chooseify.com/vault. Just sign up. And we hope to have a lot more of these really cool resources. So that's just a little update in my world.
I wanted to add on to that just because you mentioned solar panels. Maybe there's someone listening for the first time. This conversation builds on itself. So for those of you that have been with us for months and maybe years, like you're caught up. But for someone listening to this, if you're interested, well, why solar panels? Why are you looking into that? Is that a cost-effective purchase? We talked about this in episode 105R, and we did a solar panel cost analysis. And Brian Feraldi also wrote an article around this, which was posted on our website, titled, Are Solar Panels Worth the Investment? Both of those will be linked up in the show notes for today's episode if you want to go back and get some context. But yeah, man, keep us in the loop with what you find out. I know that part of what we talked about was that there are some tax credits in place that make this idea particularly compelling for perhaps the next 12 to 24 months. So Brad, let's go ahead and take a few minutes and talk about this past week's episode with Rocky. And in particular, what struck me is I think you can get caught up in your own mind and get to a very negative place, in large part due to, the news media cycle, which is so dead set on telling you that things have never been worse. What strikes me is that there is so much opportunity available. And that's what came through in Rocky's story, truly describing this first, second, and third generation where you're able to build wealth completely from scratch in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's opportunity and with a little bit of optimism, right? Like his parents were incredible. I mean, he said this was their second time starting over in life. And they came here basically from India with $25 in their pockets. It was just really cool to see, like he was watching people in his community, in this immigrant community, quote, move up the financial ladder. He could actually see it. There was a quote that I just thought was fascinating, which is, it was awesome to watch that success was possible and watch people building success. And in the Indian culture, we just talk about money. I thought there was like a direct relation to the FI community here. This is normalizing the conversation around money. He's saying that people talked in his community about, oh, how much did you pay for that car? How much do you make? What are you saving? Those type of things. And it just normalized it. It made it something from, oh, that's taboo, or we can't possibly talk about that, to, all right, this is a normal topic of conversation. And probably more importantly, it's a normal topic of thought. How many people in American culture think about their finances on a regular basis? Probably not that many. People are so nervous. They don't want to think about the debt or the credit cards or what are they going to do? Like they don't have any idea what they're doing. And we don't learn about this. But when you normalize it, when you have a community where you can chat about this and think about it, I think that just helps everything.
And normalizing the conversation is exactly what's happening. When I think about my childhood, the money conversation was, I wouldn't say it was taboo. It's just, we didn't really talk about it. We didn't really discuss strategies. I mean, you didn't want to go into debt. I mean, you knew that. But outside of that, there wasn't any sort of serious generational wisdom being passed down. And in our community, when we look at, as an aggregate, what we're doing, by and far, our community is the first and second generation, right? Probably mostly the first, building wealth for the first time. Probably a little bit of second generation in here where we have a significant amount of wealth and we're building on top of that. But it's that third generation, right? Rocky says by the third generation, it's completely lost. Wow. Now, I'm not making the case that everybody needs to get to that point where, it's old money and it's trust fund babies and everything else. I think many of us kind of recoil from this idea that you never had to work for it. You never had skin in the game. But at the same time, it's an equal tragedy to have put the time in the first and second generation and then just completely blow it by the third and start over. And I've been thinking about that a lot. I mean, is old money just, at bare minimum, is it just the people that figured out how to transfer it from the third to the fourth generation and beyond? Is that all this is? And if so, what would it mean if a larger percentage of the population could figure out how to make that generational transition and keep more of it, at least maintain the progress that's been achieved from one to the next?
Yeah, I hear you. And I've been thinking about this more recently, also, especially because Jim Collins talked about it so eloquently at Chautauqua. He talked about being a steward for his money and his family's money for, I think he said 7 generations. That's the timeline with which he's thinking about this. And when you change the frame from just, oh, how am I going to make it through my life with enough money, to how am I going to be a good steward of this money for 7 generations? That's an interesting conversation, right? And of course, we're in a fortunate position to be even thinking about this. And many people in our community are just hoping to get to that number for themselves. And there's nothing selfish about that and not implying that in any way, shape, or form. But it's interesting when you do have that enough point, right? And you can start thinking about this. And really, I think about it all the time with my kids. As Rocky said, by the third generation, things turned out horribly, right? That was the quote. I think the way to avoid that is to start having these conversations like Rocky did with his kids at 4 or 5 years old about money generally, about how expensive things are. I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing him here, but we talk about this in our house. We don't sit down with spreadsheets and go through that with our kids. I mean, they're slightly too young for that. They wouldn't be interested. But we do talk about money almost on a daily basis. I mean, not like overtly, but things come up, and our kids, again, it's normalizing it, Jonathan. I think that's the crucial part. There's no reason our kids can't be involved in that. There's no reason they can't be involved in, hey, why are you guys not buying stuff? Or what was interesting when I got back from Camp 5, this was kind of cute, Jonathan. So Laura was telling me the story of how she got some like amazing deals at Costco, and Molly was there with her. Molly's reporting back, wow, mommy got X, Y, and Z items and only spent $94, and she had a coupon. That's what Molly in her cute little 7-year-old voice is reporting back to me. And like, that's just cool. She understands that her mom, even though she by all measures has money, right? And shouldn't have to think about this if it was normal American parlance. She is looking for good deals and she's looking for this coupon. Now, Molly internalizes this, whether she knows it or not, it's there. And just by having this conversation, you should have seen her excitement. It was just so cute. It's like, wow, she got all this stuff for such little money and she used the coupon. So it was just one of those funny little anecdotes, Jonathan. But like the little stuff is the big stuff, you know?
Yeah. And I was thinking, there's so many people that have found this community relatively recently. And as we go into this year, I mean, the community is going to double and triple in size. The people that are thinking about this, especially with the release of the documentary, there's going to be people that are looking for how to get started. Tens of thousands of new people every single day are going to be looking for how do I get started with this. And I was thinking, Brad, while we covered a lot of this stuff in some of our earlier episodes, I think it probably would be worth our time to take all the information that we've laid out there and do our best to put it together into essentially, for lack of a better word, like a boot camp. But just try to organize it and present it and maybe like kind of just go back, do a 10 or 20 part series where we just kind of walk through these tenets of how do I, if I'm starting from scratch, or maybe I'm starting deeply in debt, how do I get to the point where my financial freedom clock is started? How do I get my spouse on board when they won't talk to me about this stuff? How do I increase my income if my income is driving this problem? How do I start my budget? And then finally, once I'm back to even, I'm on the other side, what do I do with the difference to actually build legacy wealth for myself, my family, and the next generation? I think that we could really put this together, and then we can bring in guests to fill in things that maybe we missed at the first pass.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Also, that can help us curate all of our old episodes, right? We have 200 episodes at this point with all the roundups. And yeah, I mean, there's stuff we talked about a year and a half ago. That's essential information. I like that, Jonathan. That's very cool. I think we should put it together. As usual, you're presenting something brand new to me that's monumental on the podcast. But yeah, I think it's cool.
Well, Rocky just inspired me by talking about this. We can't just let all of this work from the first and second generation go to waste by the third. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to society to help present this information in a way that's so compelling that we can actually sustain the progress that we've made up to this point.
Yeah, I totally agree about fleshing these ideas out. And it's always interesting, like all the guests and all these episodes, they just build on top of each other. And Rocky gave us a lot of information. I know you found especially interesting about college scholarships and that app that had one SAT question a day.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, kind of tying this to my idea about the boot camp. Like there's a couple things that we need to cover. One is that we need to do a much better job highlighting how that 16-year-old, how your daughter, right? Your daughter is a couple years out from school and you have a decent net worth, but you're not, she's not a trust fund baby. And your net worth is probably there because you didn't have to spend it all on 5 kids going to school. That would deplete any net worth. So being able to separate yourself out from that and figure out, Rocky said, you're smart. You can figure out how to pay for college. Well, that sounds great, but let's give the kid a shovel so they can actually dig that with. It's not just go get the student loans. How do you give them a compelling toolbox with which they can pick from the options that are available? They can get a great education. They can get a great job. And then right behind that, and Rocky added some details to that picture. If we can help them get good SAT scores, while it's not a one-shot cure-all for everything, it certainly is going to make some scholarships easier to obtain. And why not? It's so easy. It's such low-hanging fruit. What if you can build a skill? We know that for better or worse, America in particular leans heavily on standardized tests. Why can't, if you can learn anything, right? If you can learn anything, if you don't have a fixed mindset, if you have a growth mindset, why can't you learn to be better at standardized tests? And certainly building something into a routine like this little app would fit the bill, would serve the purpose. It's a great start. It doesn't have to be all that you do, but it's certainly a wonderful thing to add to your repertoire. And I was thinking along with this, Brad, we need to go out there and we need to find some awesome career coaches. There's so many people that are in careers that they've hit the ceiling, and that ceiling was low. I mean, it wasn't getting them to the median income or beyond. What does it look like to retrain and reskill if you don't want to be a coder? There are plenty of other jobs that we have covered and will cover in the future that can get you above median income with no college, with an associate's degree, and just by having someone that can help us think through the questions that you would want to look, the places and the resources that are available, figure out how to get out of a job that's not paying enough to get you past that median income line so you can achieve that high savings rate. I mean, these are the type of things that we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to do some research and we need to bring some people in to help us. Like Ash, every single week on our email list that you just mentioned, the first question we send out to people is, what is the biggest thing that you're struggling with? And I look at every single one of those responses, and there are a couple patterns that come to place. One is getting my spouse on board, which is behavioral, right? Which is a relationship, it's communication. And two, the second one that I see is increasing my income. These are big factors. It's great if you find someone that's making six figures, helping them achieve a 50% savings rate is, relatively easy. Let's sharpen things up. But if you got an individual that's making 30K or 24K, it's not going straight to the 50% savings rate. Yes, it's optimizing your budget, but it's figuring out how to increase your income and coming up with a toolbox for those individuals. It's the same situation as a college student. For the college student, it's how do we keep you from going six figures in student loan debt for a job that may or may not be there? For this individual, it's how do we get that income up? How do you career hack, or how do you retrain in another field? And I think that's not really something me and you can speak to, but there are career coaches out there that do this, and they consistently help people get to a new place. And we need to go out of our way to find someone that can help educate us and help our community with this information. It's so valuable.
Yeah. And just going back to what you said a couple of minutes ago about like the SAT, it's about knowing the rules of the game. And I think this is one of the most attractive parts of the FI mindset to me, is knowing the rules of every game and trying to maximize. The system is the system in many cases. And of course, I'm not arguing don't try to change the system. That's a totally separate line of reasoning and argument, certainly. But these are the rules of the game. And how can I maximize that the best of my ability? Unfortunately, we know the rules of the game of American higher education are SAT scores and GPA matters. If you know that, then you can do like Rocky did and have his kids do this app, right, where they're taking one or multiple questions a day, every single day from the time they're a freshman in high school. By the time you get to junior, senior year, where you need to actually take these exams for real, you've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times. And it's just obvious. You've seen all the tricks. You know what's going to come. You know the subject matter. It's knowing the rules. So obviously, this is a place of privilege that we can have years of time ahead to get our kids ready. But again, you know the rules, you can maximize it. I find that this beautifully attractive way of looking at life, where you can look at it as this game. I know the rules, I'm going to maximize, and I'm going to win to the best of my ability. So yeah, that's just something that just always jumps out to me, and I really wanted to emphasize it.
And Brad, as I think through, like, if you could impart one skill set that is priceless to your teen, to your young adult, to this next generation, and you want to really set them up for success, it strikes me that one of the common themes that I've heard over and over again from people whose opinion I really value is that if you could have one skill set, it's going to be communication skills. And I was looking at an article that popped up recently. I would love to find the actual reference so I could link it up in the show notes, but it was saying that when they look at CEOs of companies and they look for the common trait, the common job that all of them had, when they go back far enough, at some point they find sales. And it struck me that it's sales because it's communication. This is not about you being a used car salesman. You've been a lot. Those of you that are used car salesmen, this is not a jab on you, but this is not like trying to put anybody into that particular box. But sales is the most vital skill set there is. And it's not because you're trying to sell something. It's because you're communicating your vision. You're able to sell your employer on why you can do the job, your future employer on why you can do the job. You're involving your teammates on why to work with you on a certain project in a certain way. It's when you're going out and you're collaborating and you're starting your own venture, you're able to communicate that you have an idea that you think can really be something. Almost every single startup that's ever happened required someone to be able to sell that vision. And that's why I think communication paired with sales is probably like, if you could latch onto one thing, do that. And if you know that, just like we said, hey, it's probably worth it to build up your SAT skill set. It's probably worth it to build up your communication skills, because I think even Warren Buffett, in a pretty famous talk that he gave, 2009 Columbia Business School, said to the individuals, hey, if you get a degree, it's going to be worth this amount and I'll give you X number of dollars. But if you, on top of that, are a very good communicator, it's worth double or triple that. I mean, it's just, you can apply a value to your ability to sell your ideas to people. So knowing that, how does one develop good communication skills? And I think that that is its own skill set that's worth exploring. Do you join Toastmasters and practice giving talks? Do you take a public speaking class at your high school or at your college? Do you read? Do you read lots of books? You know, these ideas, they don't come from nowhere. I truly believe there's no new idea under the sun, Brad. Rather, people take ideas and they repurpose them and reuse them as their own. And if you're not reading other information, where are these ideas coming from? So that's kind of like my overall mindset, as I'm trying to, without the perfect frame, how do you create your own luck? How do you create an environment in which you're doing your best to guarantee success? And I think realizing that you can be anybody, you can learn anything, you can apply a growth mindset is a valuable piece of this conversation.
Yeah, Jonathan, that is fascinating. And I'd love to kind of ruminate on that more and respond, but I guess I'll give you my quick hit thoughts. And as far as speaking publicly and communicating, like I think repetition matters so much. I know personally, and I don't really talk about this all that much, but like this debilitated me throughout most of my life, like speaking in public. I mean, I know like the old cliche is like people's biggest fears, greater than dying, and I don't know about that, but I wouldn't go quite that extreme, but I just hated speaking in public, even down to like asking a question. So I think of what Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory says. I'm the type of person that, okay? It's this way that you look at yourself. I'm the type of person that ask questions because I'm interested, and I don't let fear debilitate me. Just this past weekend in Camp FI is a perfect example. I can remember dozens of times in a little group meeting or a speech, at the end, they say, hey, who has questions? Almost invariably, I had a question. Also, almost invariably, I never asked it. I can think of 0 instances where I asked a question in a public setting because my heart was beating out of my chest, and it was something that I wouldn't do. I still had that kind of fear reflex, even as Brad from Choose FI, and I say that very jokingly, in the Camp FI, I still had that fear reflex because it's part of me. But I said, I'm the type of person that asks these questions because I'm genuinely interested in the answer. I think there were 6 speakers at the event that weekend, and I think I asked 4 or 5 questions. I didn't let that. I mean, obviously, I still had my heart beating fast, and I just controlled it, and I asked my question because I was genuinely interested. So there really is a larger point to this communication. I view it as I am genuinely curious, and I think listening is such a crucial part of communicating. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but when you really listen and you sit back and you're curious about someone, then you can communicate with them on such a deeper level because they feel your interest. They feel that energy. That's one of the biggest things I've picked up in my own interpersonal communication and relationships is I can feel that. And I hope that the person I'm speaking with feels, and I genuinely believe they do. And it's fostered these deeper relationships than I'd ever had before in my life. So clearly, I think something is going right here. And it just comes from that deep feeling of just wanting to learn.
It's so fascinating for me, Brad, that you've expressed this fear of, in your case, you're saying public speaking, but at the same time, you've become a public figure. I mean, this podcast is a top 1% podcast in all of the world now. And your voice is being heard by hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis. Have you thought about the irony of that? And also maybe how someone that has a similar fear of speaking, a fear of communication, can kind of benefit from what you've been able to work through?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am aware of the irony of that. But to me, that's a beautiful thing. And I think it shows how anybody can grow. You're talking about communication as an essential piece of growth. I think knowing that you have that growth mindset, like grit and working through something, this is not easy for me, even now. And I think this is really important. I hope people are kind of leaning into this. You might hear me on this podcast and think this sounds smooth and natural and that I've been able to do this my entire life. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing. This was something that crushed me for my entire life and held me back. But it's become a strength of mine now. And if that could be for me, then any of those things that are holding you back, you, the listener, it can become a strength of yours if you wanted to. And you just have to find that strategy. So for me, the strategy counterintuitively was listening better and being in the moment more and connecting with people, right? So find that strategy that works for you. People ask me like, oh, do you hone your interviewing skills or your communications, or do you go to Toastmasters? Honestly, I've done none of those things. I suspect many of them would help or would have helped. So I'm not denigrating them at all. That wasn't the strategy for me. I found a strategy that worked for me to overcome something that was really important to me. I would challenge you out there to find that thing that you want to get better at. Find a strategy that's going to work for you. It might just be like you said, Jonathan, everybody says Toastmasters. You hear that all the time. It's supposed to be a wonderful organization. That wasn't the path I took, but I found the strategy that worked for me. So I think this is a conversation we should probably revisit at some point in the future. I think it's fundamental and just crucially important. And yeah, I mean, I hope the audience is maybe hopefully taking something away from this vulnerability that I'm showing. Like, this was a big thing for me, honestly, Jonathan, but I think it's become a strength.
And Choosify helped you work through that. I mean, I want to reiterate that. It wasn't suddenly you became good at this and then you did Choosify. You were terrified of this. And when Choosify became an opportunity, you said, yeah, I'll give that a shot. Even though I'm terrified of public speaking, I will put my thoughts out there, and it could go horrible, but that's fine. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to try this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, you can probably relay stories of that first interview we did on Radical Personal Finance 2 years ago. And even our first couple of episodes, just hearing my own voice in the headphones was jarring to me. And like, I don't know if I could do that. I had this moment where it's like, yikes, I don't know if this is going to go south or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's even more than that. Like, this is part of it. We've had the opportunity to give several talks publicly, and we've had the opportunity to do some television interviews, and just really some amazing doors have opened up. But what I wanted to highlight is every single time that we did something new, both of us felt like that first day of class again, that terrifying first day of class again, where we didn't know if it was going to work. But we said yes, and we did it. And then at some point, we got our reps in there as well. And so even though, you have this podcasting and suddenly you're comfortable, me and you in the privacy of our own homes are comfortable podcasting. But then now we're having to put our thoughts out there publicly on a stage. And again, we're going back and we're terrified. And then it works, or it goes okay, or it doesn't go as bad as we thought it would go, right? Some variation of that. Then you take that confidence with you into the next one. And I think, what if you were just as an individual, what if you were just, going back to what Brad said earlier, what if you were just the person that said yes? What if you were the person that anytime there was an opportunity to give a talk at work, you were that person? Anytime there was an opportunity to communicate a vision, you signed up. Even if you weren't the best person, you got your reps in and you got better at it. What if you continually forced yourself into an uncomfortable situation that cultivated a skill set that you know is valuable? Where does that put you a couple months from now, a couple years from now, when you build the talent stack? Brad, the talent stack is something that you introduced me to. Obviously, it wasn't your idea. It was grabbed from Scott Adams, the author of Dilbert. But I was putting together some thoughts relatively recently, and I realized this. I'm the type of person that can learn anything. I'm not going to be the best at anything, but I'm going to learn enough random skills, enough somehow attached skills. I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be able to make connections that maybe no one else is making. Scott Adams called this the talent stack. Until I had that, it was kind of unformed. But when I understood that idea, that principle, I could go all in on that hand. And so while in 2016, I had spent the last 8 years pursuing one skill, pharmacy, right? I was a pharmacist. That kind of pivoted and shifted. And 2 years later, I'm a podcaster, a blogger, a writer. I'm good at advanced motion graphics. information analytics. I mean, I just have a skill set that each day keeps getting added to, and it's interest led, right? Every single time I add a talent onto this, I can see the threads on where that can go. And I don't know exactly how, but at some point I'm able to use all of these, and it's wonderful. I understand videography. I'm a decent public speaker. It's like, what is a skill set that you're building for yourself? And if you keep doing the exact same thing you're doing now, you're going to get the exact same results, right? Same action, same results. Different action, different inputs, different results. We understand that, but in many cases, we don't take action on it. What if this year, 2019, was the year that you did that? You changed the input and you looked for different results. And Brad, with that in mind, I think we should take a few minutes and play some voicemails from our community. How in 2019 are they changing the input?
Hey, Brad and Jonathan, this is Quinn. I've been listening to your show for the past 5 months after recently discovering FI. When my wife and I found FI, we started aggressively reducing our spending, and we realized one easy way for us to save significantly on our grocery bills was to eliminate meat from our diets. We had tried a few meatless meals that we liked so much, we accidentally went 3 days without eating any meat. From there, we spent a month meat-free and have switched to a whole foods plant-based diet just over a month ago. The month before we cut meat out of our diets, we spent over $850 on food. But by cutting out meat and eating more rice, beans, veggies, and fruit, we cut our food spending down to just under $400 for the two of us. We've since increased our spending slightly as we've started to actually learn more about nutrition and focus on the only thing more important to our path to FI than our savings rate, our health. Just like we were living on autopilot with our finances before FI, we were living on autopilot with our health before going vegan with our diet. Just like Jonathan always says, we didn't know what we didn't know. The best part of this new shift in our lives is that we feel great. We're eating better, tastier, and more exciting food. With supervision from my doctors, I've also been able to reduce and even eliminate some of the maintenance medications that I'm on. Thanks for the Vegan Path to FI episode. I also wanted to quickly plug the Vegan Fire group on Facebook, which has already been a great resource for me just after the few days I've been a part of it. The simplest takeaway from everything we've experienced over the past 2 months is this simple call to action. Eat more plants. Thanks again.
It's awesome, man. I think Eat More Plants can be a guiding light, even for those people that are not yet willing to embrace a vegetarian vegan lifestyle.
Yeah, I hear you. I personally have no dogma or deep-seated beliefs about eating meat or not, but I think what Quinn talked about feeling great, that should be the guiding light. What's interesting, and I think I mentioned this previously, Jonathan, after that Vegan Path to FI episode, my wife and I now have Tofu Wednesday. So that's our dinner is we have tofu every single Wednesday. And Jonathan, I kid you not, this has become the meal we look forward to the most.
Dude,
it's
I have pad thai ready to go in all the ingredients to make pad thai in the fridge. This is like almost a year later, we're still making pad thai.
And for us, the guiding light is feeling great. I feel so satisfied after our Tofu Wednesday dinner that sometimes I don't even need to eat breakfast the next morning. Like I'm still full, but not that horrible full feeling you get. I'm just satisfied. And yeah, we've been looking for these things that like also just take decision making out of it. Actually, Laura mentioned that this morning. So she's kind of instituted, and sadly, I didn't even realize this, but we have Tuesday soup night. So she makes a whole bunch of soups and freezes them. And unbeknownst to me, sadly, we've been having Tuesday soup night. But it's cool.
You didn't know it was a thing. You were just. I
didn't know it was a thing. Didn't know it was a thing at all.
Took you 2 years to see the pattern.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not too quick on the uptake here, but for Laura, that's taking decision making out of it, right? So we have Tuesday soup night, Wednesday tofu, and like I've previously said about Laura's meal planning, she'll do one big meal that she'll actually cook that week. That'll last for 2 or 3 nights. So I mean, we're at 4 to 5 nights of the 7 just right there. And most of this stuff is done in advance. That soup is cooked in one big vat or multiple vats where she'll make a couple different soups and then freeze them in individual portions enough for the two of us to eat for dinner. So there's no work that needs to be done for the next couple months of Soup Tuesdays. And recently she did her thing where she bought like the family pack of chicken and breaded and fried it over, it took her about 90 minutes, but it was 6 pounds of chicken, right? And froze them into individual portions. So she has that at a moment's notice. So again, it's just making your life easier by planning. As Quinn said, you can save a lot of money doing this, just being intentional, first off. But Quinn is saving it by focusing on this more vegan path. And it's just the larger point of do what makes you feel good and stop living on autopilot. So yeah, just really, really good lessons there.
This next voicemail that I want to play is from Cody, talking about how he and his family have really taken ownership of their financial situation.
Hey, Brad and Jonathan, Cody here. First, just wanted to say how much I enjoy the show and especially the episode earlier this week with Deanna and the roundup that followed. The biggest excuse I've heard or read that keeps people from pursuing financial independence is the story they tell themselves because of their specific life circumstances. I'm not going to discount the difficulties some people have that truly act as a roadblock to pursuing financial independence, but I love how Deanna and Julian from Montana Money Adventures before her show that if they can do it, so can most people. Excuses often act as convenient walls we build to keep ourselves from becoming extraordinary. And if the average person took a look at their income and spending and added a dash of creativity and willpower, I'm confident they could pursue and reach financial independence within 15 years. To wrap this full circle with a call out from the roundup to the community to share an annual update, I like to share mine. 6 years ago, my wife and I were living in Seattle with near minimum wage jobs at Taco Bell and Office Depot, with college degrees that weren't doing anything beyond increasing our debt. We played the victim card that is often played by college graduates struggling to find work that paid above minimum wage. But then we found the financial independence community and took ownership of our situation. Shortly after our new outlook, we secured new jobs that paid us $30,000 a year, or just under $15 an hour. Now, that might not sound like much in Seattle, but we were ecstatic as it represented almost a 50% jump from where we were. We drastically cut our expenses. I started grabbing as much overtime as possible, and my wife began freelance writing once a month. Within 2 years, we completely eliminated our $83,000 of consumer debt. Towards the final 6 months of this period, we bought a house in a lower cost of living area across the state and moved there. Instead of finding a low-paying job like the old me would have done, I put together a detailed work-from-home plan that would have me working in 5 different departments. I had proven myself a valuable employee, and this active initiative proved my determination of continuing to add value in a remote capacity. They accepted my proposal, and I became my company's first remote employee, allowing me to not only maintain my salary, but get a raise as well. My journey has brought me from a financial independence aspirant living in the high cost of living area of Seattle with a minimum wage job to eliminating significant consumer debt and designing my job and my life to put us on trajectory to achieve financial independence within a short time period. In the past year alone, we doubled our net worth, wrote a book on financial independence that was featured in HuffPo and The Penny Hoarder, started a blog, expanded our family, and I personally just crossed the 1-year anniversary of losing over 40 pounds, which I've kept off completely. I enjoyed meeting you both at FinCon and would like to one more time thank you for the podcast. It's inspired us to live a more intentional life and specifically inspired us to write a freaking book. My wife and I are indebted to you both. I'm looking forward to the next year and can't wait to see where this community goes. Thanks, guys.
You know, Brad, Cody's book is titled Clocking Out Early, and why have we not had him on the show yet? What an incredible story.
Yeah, we really need to. It was funny. When you said Cody, obviously I didn't know which Cody it was, but as soon as I heard his voice, I'm like, oh, that's Cody we met at FinCon. So yeah, what a cool story. That's really incredible. I love that he basically made this remote job for himself. I mean, they've doubled their net worth recently, wrote a book, lost weight. I mean, that's a little bit of everything.
I mean,
right?
Talk about different inputs, right? That's this show. This show is different inputs, and look what they've accomplished. Cody, we'll be reaching out to you. We got to get this episode on the books, man. This is incredible. All right, I got one more voicemail that I want to play today, and this is from Nick talking about his experiences with global travel.
Hi guys, this is Nick, 24-year-old dietitian in Iowa. Love your podcast. I'm slowly working my way up to all your episodes. I'm only on 46R. I just listened to the review of a person's voicemail regarding travel rewards and credit cards and mentioning how Airbnbs can be a useful strategy aside from hotels. Just wanted to add that hostels are actually a very resourceful opportunity to not only meet people at an affordable housing, but also through meeting people with a shared camaraderie and as a love of culture and experience versus things, you can gain invaluable relationships through friends that you meet and can go visit them. And I have personally done this about 4 times. I've visited a friend in Switzerland that I met in Brussels, visited a friend in the Netherlands who I met in Portugal, and I visited a friend in Paris who I met in Italy. On a trip to Colombia this last year, met a few Brazilian friends who I plan to visit in the upcoming years. And, all these stays with these friends really saved me upwards of at least $80 a stay for a couple nights in comparison to a hostel, let alone in comparison to a hotel without hotel points, upwards of $200 to $400, while at the same time gaining another invaluable experience of experiencing their culture from someone who lives there, breathes there, is from there. Through meeting them at a hostel, you already know that they just have a passion not only for other people's cultures, but most likely for their own culture. And so I can't speak to the benefit of hostels enough, and wish that they had their own credit card system to kind of get some points and hack those travel rewards. But unfortunately, there's nothing there to my understanding. But please share the news if you find of any hostel rewards points that you could use. However, I suppose you could always go with Capital One Venture, but I'm a Chase user myself and really have a minimum 2.25% cash back using the Freedom Unlimited mixed with the Reserve and the Freedom rotating categories. Thought I'd share that. Keep up the great work, guys. I was one of those savers that had no direction, and now I have that fire burning in me. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Yeah, Nick, that's really cool in general, especially even what you just said there at the end, like with no direction. When you find this community and you get some direction, everything just becomes clearer. And I love what you said about hostels. That was really neat. Like I know I enjoyed, many years ago when I went backpacking around Europe, staying in those hostels precisely because of the reasons you said. You're meeting people from all over the world. You're experiencing new cultures. You're making friends that you could be in touch with for years to come. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I think you hit on it actually with the travel rewards that you most likely can use Capital One Venture or Barclaycard Arrival Plus to pay for those hostels. Now, certainly there are no hostel reward points that I know of personally, but assuming that those code as travel, which I would have to believe that they would in many or most cases. Obviously, I cannot promise that, but if it codes as travel, as far as like the merchant category code for the credit card, then that's an expense that you can wipe out with a Capital One Venture or Barclaycard Arrival Plus. And that's very cool, especially when you're talking, those bonuses can be significant, $500 plus. And if you're talking about a hostel that only is going to cost you $20, $40, $50 a night, whatever it may be, maybe less in some cases, that bonus can go a real long way. So I think there really is a lot to be said for that. So that's clearly the travel rewards path that I would take for hostels.
All right. Well, as we start to wrap up this episode, I wanted to mention 2 things just for our local groups. That's something that we're making a big focus for 2019. And if you're adminning a local group, we really want to highlight, maybe a success from something that's happened in your local community, whether it be your first in real life meetup or potluck or event or talk that's been given. So in our admin group, that's being shared, and we're including that on different episodes from our Friday roundup. And I wanted to give a shout out to Fort Lauderdale that just had their first real life meetup. And, really that's all it takes. It just takes one real life meeting for people to realize that this is something that they want to include and make it more of a priority. And it really just takes one person stepping up and saying, I will be willing to spearhead this and get it going. And then there's plenty of people that will stand up to help support that. And with over 200 local groups all around the world, many people ask, well, what should I do for my first meetup? Well, what should it be? Where should we go? And just don't overthink it. Keep it simple. It could be a coffee or a happy hour meetup. It could be at a venue that's just convenient for the local members. It could literally just be a meet and greet on day one, finding out a little bit more about your story, which is often the way that Camp FIs begin as well. From there, after you have that one event, it's pretty easy to start engaging some speakers. We talk about communication. Many people have done something really awesome, whether it be entrepreneurship, whether it be investment strategies, whether, there's so many travel rewards. There's so many different ways to take a conversation, and there's going to be someone that's willing to give their take on it. And this can be an ongoing thing that community members contribute to bring their perspective on real estate into this situation, to talk about opportunities in the local area. There's so many different ways to take the conversation, but it takes a few individuals being willing to say, hey, This is important, and we want to start this. And from the Choose FI perspective, we want to support that effort, and we want to highlight it. And when you're doing something, we want to draw people's attention to it so that it's easier to get that engagement. That is the function of the local groups and the reason that we've set it up the way that we have. If you're interested in finding a local group in your area and being a part of this conversation, just go to choosefi.com/local. And there's a list of all the countries and all the locations that have local groups. And there's also a global map so you can see all over the world where these local groups actually are and get involved.
Yeah, and Jonathan, it's about breaking down that resistance. That's what you're talking about for like that very first meetup. Just schedule a meetup, even if you're not the admin of the local area. Our most recent Choose FI Richmond meetup was just from a new member who wanted to get together because we as admins hadn't put anything together recently since they moved to the area. So we're all getting together. Break down the resistance. It can be something as simple as just getting together over coffee. Hey, we're going to meet at Starbucks at 5:00 on Thursday. Whoever shows up, shows up. You know, we've seen from that all the way to San Diego. A couple months ago, they had Sean from FI Tax Guy talk for, I think, 6 to 8 hours where he just answered questions. And I think most recently, I just actually saw a post. I think they had an event this weekend where they had someone talk about travel rewards. She spoke for 4 hours answering questions. That's amazing. So those are the bookends of this, right? But it can be anywhere in between. But it's just break down the resistance and get it to happen, you know?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that, Brad and I are going to try and do this year, we haven't done a whole lot with video up to this point, but we are actually going to be doing some live streams to collaborate with some of the local groups and with the community at large. And so we'll give you more details on that after we have got it fully fleshed out. But it's something that, we would love to participate in some degree with your local group meetup if possible. Well, unfortunately, that's going to bring this episode to a close. Now, as you know, we like to finish every episode by doing a drawing for a copy of a book that we have found useful. And there's 3 books that we offer. The first is J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth. The second is Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future. And the third book from Vincent Puglisi, Freelance to Freedom. If you want to enter the drawing, all you need to do is just go to choosefi.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there, and leave us a short written review on either iTunes or Stitcher. And then send us an email to feedback@choosefi.com, letting us know that you left a review and what screen name you left it under. We give away 1 book for every 5 written reviews that we get, and we announce the winners on the Friday Roundup. And Brad, how many winners do we have today?
All right, Jonathan, we have 1 winner today, and the winner is Daryl. And Daryl said, "This is a life changer. I started listening to Choose FI early last year. I was getting ready to commission in the Air Force, and I knew I needed to make some changes to how my family was living. Thankfully, I stumbled across this podcast while searching for alternative financial management. Not only did we go from paycheck to paycheck living to now over $200,000 net worth in less than a year, we are also living a more meaningful and healthier life. Thank you so much for opening our eyes to what the FIRE community can do for each and every one of us."
That's awesome, man. All right, guys, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.